Hi everyone, welcome to my podcast. I'm Stephen. I'm an ex-Royal Naval clearance diver. I'm also a salvage diver, and I worked offshore as an air and saturation diver as well. These podcasts really just cover that period in my career with some interesting stories. This episode really starts right when I'm young, and it gives you an idea of how when I was younger, eventually heading towards bomb mine disposal and diving. And there's probably 3 or 4 key things that happened between 12 and 15 years old. And these determined the direction I took in the future in terms of the Navy and offshore diving. So you guys relax and listen to this first episode. I was probably about 12 years old. This is the first sort of incident, and it's a reason why I eventually ended up being involved in bomb mine disposal. So the first one was my brother and I, Hugh. We were always down on the beach. We lived in Tayport, and we were down Tentsmuir Beach in Tentsmuir Forest. During the Second World War, it was used a lot by the army, and there was a lot of small munitions lying around, which we were always trying to pick up as young boys. You know, you were really interested in shells, etc. I mean, I'm talking about bullet shells. and part of that was we were down the beach one day, and we found what looked like a rocket, a small, stumpy rocket, had fins on the end, rusted, completely rusted. And we thought, my God, it looks like a rocket, one bomb of some sort. And we put it in our cart. We had a little cart we used to tow around. And we went back up and showed it to my mum, who sort of went, you better take that to the police. That doesn't look very good. So we stuck it in the back of the cart again. It was rattling around. When I think about it, it was just mad. We eventually got to the local police station in Tayport. At that time, they actually had local police. And a Mr. Lowe, there was 2 police officers, Mr. Morris and Mr. Lowe. And it was Mr. Lowe on duty at the time. And we showed it to him, and he nearly jumped out of his skin. He was like, what the certain words are you guys doing with this? And we explained we found it, and he was like, why didn't you just leave it there? Why did you've carried it all the way through Tayport, you idiots. But of course, as young guys, we don't have a real brain at all. He called, I presume, the RAF bomb team, and they came and took it away. He wasn't very happy, and we got a right bollocking, not just from him, but from my mum as well. So that was the first time. The second time was probably about a year or so later. I was down in Tentsmuir. I was coming back along the beach, and I found what looked like a rocket. It was about 3 or 4 foot long, just exactly like a rocket with fins on the end. Obviously military of some sort. So I thought, yeah, I'll go and take that home. Looks great. Like you do. I put it into my backpack, but on the way back, there used to be a balloon weather station. So I popped in there thinking, maybe theirs. And the guy there confirmed, he said, look, nothing to do with us, but you should take it to the police. And he took my name and address. So off I went, but I was a little bit hungry. So I decided not to go to the police then, but to go home and get something to eat. So when I got home, I took this, what looked like a rocket, and put it in the coal cellar below the house. Went up, had my tea, never mentioned it to my mum. About an hour later, knock on the door. There is Mr. Morrison this time, a local policeman, with a couple of people from the RAF bomb team. They were not happy again. He said, where is it? Wait, you've picked something up. I showed them it in the coal cellar, and they got everybody to get back, well back. I think they generally knew what it was. And there was no danger. It already went off, and it had been dropped from an aircraft of some sort. So they picked it up, took it away. But again, Mr. Morrison and my mum gave me a right bollocking, which I deserved. And I think if I can pass any information on now is that if you find any of this small ordnance or large ordnance, just leave it where it is and go and call the police. Good advice that I never took. That would give you an understanding how I move towards bomb mine disposal in the future. And the second part is really about the diving side. When I was at school, I couldn't have been just before I was 14. I was at Kilrymont in St Andrews, and we had a swimming pool, and a chap called Les Pennington came. He had his own company, East Coast Divers, and he was also an ex-Navy diver. And I had the opportunity. He ran a small scuba club, and he gave me, when he came along, he gave a lot of people the opportunity to try on diving gear, scuba and mask, fins, all in the pool. I loved it. I'd grown up with Jacques Cousteau movies and documentaries, so I just loved it, absolutely embraced it. And I think he's seen that as well, and over a very short period, he asked if I wanted to go and do some open water diving. And I said, absolutely, love it. So one Saturday morning, we all went down. There was a few of us from the little scuba club, all about the same age, a couple of older ones, and Les. The weather wasn't particularly good. It was just high winds, and you could tell just looking in the water, there was no visibility at all. Most people, in fact, everyone said, no, we're not going to bother. But I was pretty keen to get in the water. I wanted to get that experience of open water diving. So Les, I think he thought, yeah, well, I'll show him. He tied a lifeline onto me, and I got in the water and dropped. There was only like 15, 20 feet. But of course, it was quite rough and virtually no visibility. And I sort of paddled along the bottom looking at things, and eventually he gave me a pool, and up I came. When I got to the surface, we got out, and I was dropping my gear and started to wash it down. And he came over and he said, Stephen, I'm fairly impressed that you got in the water. I mean, it wasn't pleasant, was it? I said it wasn't, but I just really enjoyed it. Based on that, I think you would make a good Navy diver. Have you ever thought about that? And I hadn't really. I didn't even know what a Navy diver was or did. And he explained a few things to me. And from that moment, I thought, my God, that is definitely what I want to do. He explained that the best of the best. Once you leave there with that level of training, and this is the 70s, the North Sea was booming. He said you'll be able to, with that sort of training, you will be able to go offshore, you'll be able to dive offshore, and you'll be able to make a lot of money, not just in the North Sea, but throughout the world. And I thought, definitely, this is the direction I'm going. Well, I did think that, but that was crushed just for a little bit. And the reason for this was, as I moved into 14, 15, I got an opportunity to go and deliver milk. And anybody that's been around in the 70s and 80s, when you're in the back of a milk van, little step at the back, you grab your milk crate and you drop off the back and go and do it, and the van keeps moving. When you think about it now, it's just mad, jumping off the back with with a small crate of milk bottles. But one morning I was doing that. The guy that was driving the milk van, he had a bad night the night before and drink. As we went round a corner, straight into a wall. I was slightly taller than the other chap on the back. I went head first into the crates, over the top, and fell off. Quite badly injured. I didn't know at the time. I sort of stood up and I could hear Andy, another guy that used to deliver milk. He was in the front and his legs had been crushed against the wall, so he was screaming his head off. I sort of wandered round thinking I could help. And as I got round, Andy started to scream even more. He was going, "Stephen, your face! Your face!" And I kind of looked down at myself then, and I was just covered in blood. I mean, it was just pouring out my face. Next minute, this lady, old woman, came, and she goes, "Come on, son, I'll help you, come on, come on." The worst thing she could have done, actually, she took me into her bathroom where there was a large mirror, and I was able to see the injuries, which was pretty horrific, to be honest. Even now it makes me slightly cringe. It was massive gash in my head, my nose was in a funny angle, and a big massive gaping hole in my cheek. Not pleasant at all. But she put a towel on it, and I went outside and sat down waiting for the ambulance. Ambulance appeared, took me away, and we got stitched up. My face was fairly swollen. Went back about a week later to get analysis, to get it looked at. And they realised that a whole section of my cheekbone had gone and into the back of my face. So it had to be rebuilt. I can't remember exactly how they rebuilt it, but they used some sort of plastics and things like that. So I had to go in for an operation, got that fixed. And I always remember I'm speaking to the consultant afterwards, well, my mother was speaking to him, and I said, look, I want to be a diver, because sinuses and things like that can really affect diving. And he just said, no, you'll never be diving. You should not dive ever again. And that was it. Full stop. I was pretty devastated, to be honest, when you're a young lad and you've kind of planned your future and it's gone. I was a bit shocked, to be honest, but I kind of accepted it. Remember, I'm speaking to the consultant afterwards, well, my mother was speaking to him, and I said, look, I want to be a diver, because sinuses and things like that can really affect diving. And he just said, no, you'll never be diving. You should not dive ever again. And that was it. Full stop. Pretty devastated, to be honest, when you're a young lad and you've kind of planned your future and it's gone. I was a bit shocked, to be honest, but I kind of accepted it. And I got the opportunity. I left school at 16. I wasn't particularly academic. And I got a job as an apprentice painter and decorator with Sandhurst University. Great guys, lovely in every way. But I knew my heart was never there. It was in the Navy and diving and explosives. Once I'd started working, I met this guy who was diving with the RAF Scuba Club. So they invited me along. I went along to their pool, and gradually I started to use the gear again and get in the water. And I realised that this has all been repaired. And I was got no problem clearing my nose. I was not having any issues at all. Eventually I went out and did some open water diving as well. Very quickly it became apparent that, whoever did the rebuild did a bloody good job. And there was no reason for me not to go to the Navy. So I decided there and then that I would join up. I went to the recruiting station in Dundee. I always remember this, though. My mother and father drove me over, and the guy that was in the recruiting station, he just said, because I said, look, I want to be a clearance diver, and he almost burst out laughing. It was like, not many people ever make that. You've got to set your sights lower, blah, blah. And I was just like, absolutely not. It's either a clearance diver or I will leave, one of the two, That was my mentality. There was only two options. I was going to be a clearance diver or I was leaving the Navy once I was in. But he didn't, obviously I didn't tell him that, otherwise he wouldn't have let me in. I was accepted and went and got my medical at Condor in Arbroath. But I do remember, once I'd been accepted, I was in the back of the car driving home, and I just said to my mother, I've been accepted and I'll be leaving in 6 weeks, whatever it was. And she just burst into tears. I just couldn't believe my mum never cried like that, And I sometimes think it was tears of joy at the fact of me leaving. No, it wasn't. She was obviously worried because at that time Northern Ireland was in full flow. There was a lot of people getting killed and injured. And she knew that it wasn't going to end soon, and that eventually when I was through basic training and into clearance diver training, that I would be there. That brings me to that point, and you can see where the two bits of ordnance I picked up. I was really interested in that, and anything really that potentially could go bang. We have Les Pennington, who's encouraging me and letting me know what a clearance diver was, and encouraging me to become one. And a little hiccup, but I got through that hiccup. And I must say that try not to listen to people who tell you you can't do it, especially when you're young. You've got to realise that time does repair not just physically, but mentally as well. So just remember that if you're a young guy, you're thinking, oh, a young girl, and somebody's telling you can't do it, it should drive you to do it. That's my small piece of advice. From this point on, I will be moving into basic training in the Navy. Great stories. Some of them are funny. Some of them are quite sad, but it does give you an insight into the military training during the 1970s. Look, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I really, really appreciate you listening. You guys take care. All the best.